You are now listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
Groovy. No more Roman hell. The dead will walk near. We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord.
Praise God, big boy.
Welcome to the House by Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me today will be Derek.
Hello.
And Sean.
Hello.
And on this episode, we'll be discussing Grindhouse, the double bill of movies that was directed by Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino, with fake trailers directed by Edgar Wright, Eli Roth, Rob Zombie, and Rodriguez, which he directed the Machete trailer, which he then turned into a film later on that got a sequel as well. But in this, we're just talking about Grindhouse, which included Planet Terror and Death Proof, and came out in 2007 and was kind of a flop when it came out, really.
Financially,
Financially, it cost...
I'm looking at $67 million, and I feel like what I remember seeing, I could look this up right now, but we can look it up later, but I think it made less than that. But I think after they split it up for international sales, it made slightly over that. But still, that marketing budget for that was huge.
Yeah, so just looking at IMDb, at Box Office Mojo, the production budget was listed as $67 million, and the domestic gross was $25 million. And then, like you said, they split it up overseas, and then there's been multiple disc releases, so who knows if it ever turned a profit for anybody. But when it came out, it was not a big hit. It was kind of a curiosity. And I think a lot of people didn't really know what to think about it, just because of what it was. Apparently,
too, Machete ended up turning more of a profit than this did. It was more successful. It had like a $10 million budget and made like $44 million or something like that.
Yeah, because Machete...
Real quick, I think...
Yes?
Something that's interesting about Machete is that the Machete character is in Spy Kids. So I wonder, do either of us know, any of us know when the Machete character actually became Machete?
I don't know.
No, I've never seen Spy Kids, but I saw that trivia before.
There's like a scene. It was on the other day because I had it on Cartoon Network, and just while I was doing stuff, it was on in the background. And there was like a scene at the end of I think 3, and there's a whole lot of cameos. You got Steve Buscemi in it, and then you have you also have Cheech Marin in it because he's like in everything that he does, and. Then you have Machete show up with the machete to like kill a robot or something, but that's all you see of him. So,
well, yeah. So
I thought it was funny that.
So Machete was made for $10.5 million, and in the U.S. it grossed $26 million, and worldwide it grossed $44 million. So it was a more profitable film despite a lower budget. And we'll get into the movies of Grindhouse later. But it definitely did set off a trend in at least the indie film world of a bunch of faux exploitation films where people were trying to replicate that era via, cheap digital HD movie filmmaking stuff on super low budgets, which continues through this day.
Huge boom. Like going back and watching this too, I was like, when I was starting it, I was like, oh yeah, this just set off an entire subgenre of horror films and indie films that kind of have still been riding on that. And it's not even some of them don't even necessarily ride on it directly, but they kind of lean on that as like, oh, it's cool. That's an okay thing to do is to go on the cheap and look cheap. It's had a long lasting effect considering, it's almost like Avatar. Avatar was seen by, it was like one of the biggest movies ever. Nobody is really a huge fan of it or ever talks about it. But Grindhouse, wasn't successful at the box office, but it had this huge effect on cinema, at least lower budget cinema and genre filmmaking.
Well, yeah, because in the wake of that, you saw a million trailers on YouTube for low budget independent films that have fake film grain on the movies and the voiceover that was kind of like the what Grindhouse used for the fake trailers, stuff like that. So it definitely had a huge influence. A lot of movies have since picked that up, and still to this day, even though those movies themselves, the movie itself, Grindhouse, did not make a ton of money. And I know there was a time where there was talk like if it had done well, maybe taking some of the fake trailers that were in it and having the filmmakers behind those make movies for like another Grindhouse film, which did not happen. So
that would have been pretty cool.
If you had had an Eli Roth, Edgar Wright film, that would have been very lopsided, with one probably being great and one being terrible. And
maybe just give both to Edgar Wright, and in that case, give both to Eli Roth for the Eli Roth fans. You know what I mean? Like,
because that's such a huge group.
He has his defenders.
But so we'll be talking about Grindhouse here in a little bit. But before that, we'll briefly go through some news and things we've been watching. And on news, there are a few sad pieces of news recently with more people passing away. So Michael Parks passed away recently, and he was in a bunch of Tarantino Rodriguez stuff. He was in both segments in Grindhouse, which is why we switched to this movie for this week. In addition to being in the Kevin Smith movies lately, like Tusk and Red State, and he's been in a bunch of stuff.
Twin Peaks.
Yeah, Twin Peaks, which is coming back
this week. Yeah.
So, I mean, he's been in a bunch of stuff, and most of the people who listen to this podcast probably know him better from like he was in From Dusk Till Dawn and Kill Bill and a bunch of other stuff. So
two characters in Kill Bill. Like at the time, I knew him from Dusk Till Dawn, and I'm trying to think of anything else that. Was he in the universe between Kill Bill and From Dusk Till Dawn, or was that kind of the first two appearances of him in the Tarantino universe?
I think they're the first. I don't really remember.
Yeah, anyway, I spotted him again in Kill Bill, but then I didn't know that was him playing Bill's kind of father figure until the second time I saw it. I went to theater to see that multiple times, but the second time I realized, oh man, that's him, when he was in Kill Bill Volume 2,
Yeah.
Just an amazing character actor. I was watching that when we covered From Dusk Till Dawn, the special features, and he spoke to the camera like he was talking about acting and stuff like that, and it was awesome.
Yeah, so it's very sad whenever anybody passes away, but he was somebody that had been in a bunch of genre films that were things that all of us, came up watching and enjoying. So it's very sad to see that. And then Powers Booth passed away as well, who was also in some of the Rodriguez and Tarantino type stuff. He was in Sin City and a few other movies. So he is somebody too was in a ton of genre stuff. So it's been kind of
Tombstone, Deadwood, Red Dawn.
Yeah.
Frailty too. We covered that somewhat recently.
Yeah, he was the detective, the FBI agent in that. So somebody else has been in a ton of movies over a long period of time, especially ones that that we have found relevant, or people who listen to this podcast probably find relevant. So it seems like the past couple of years have been really bad for losing genre greats or directors or actors or just people in the community. Yeah. Which I think we mentioned before, as a lot of these actors and directors and thing, are getting up there in age, that's going to just continue to happen more and more, which is very sad.
He was 68, which was still fairly young, Well,
you got
Michael Parks was 77.
Yeah, you got Harrison Ford scheduled to be in Indiana Jones 5 at 77.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, but yeah, it does make you wonder, a lot of these movie genre stars are big to our generation, but it's for the generation coming up to 14 or 15, will the YouTube stars be there? The people they grow up following their careers?
I mean, it depends on if they stick around. I think that's a fledgling. I don't want to say fledgling thing. Obviously, it's very popular, but it's that could be a short-lived format, unlike films. And I'm not saying it's a dead end thing. I'm thinking that will evolve so much that, not everybody that is popular now will continue to carry over. And especially the ones that thrive on a younger audience, they're going to age out, and some of those audience members may stay with them, but, some of them will move on to maybe more, maybe more serious things that they're interested in, instead of just watching people on YouTube talk about, whatever, their daily life.
Because I don't think when you're, when those people have kids and stuff, they're like, hey, let's go find this YouTube personality and watch them. I don't think that translates.
But again, they may move to other outlets or they may evolve their content. Who knows? But yeah, it's going to be there's a different age of celebrity now for sure.
One too, yeah. Like a lot of the times when the YouTube stars trying to transition over to like actual films or TV shows, it's more of just stunt casting that doesn't really work as well because people are usually like bombastic and have kind of like they act, even though it's like supposed to be like video blogs or whatever. Their shtick doesn't really translate to cinema or to.
It's kind of like a lot of the Disney stars that, the exception of a few that like they're like so over the top in the shows that they do that it doesn't work. And I think that a lot of the YouTube people, like you said, they're like really bombastic. So it just, the overacting they have to do for their YouTube stuff just doesn't work in, TV or film.
Yeah. So not to get back off of that tangent too much, but so another piece of news is that there's been an update on the Purge television series. And
show.
Yeah. So previously it wasn't really known what the Purge TV series would be about. It's like, oh, is this going to be about a Purge? And it's like a 10 episode like anthology series from different angles of the Purge or something like that. But the news coming out now is it's going to be about the rest of the year around the Purge. And like, so I'm assuming like, I would assume every season ends with the Purge or something like that because the entire season is just build up. It's like, oh, you cheated with my wife, I'll kill you on the Purge. You cut me off in traffic, I'll slit your throat during the Purge. Like, that would kind of get tiresome after a while, I'd assume. So I assume there's some, like, bigger arcs for it.
At least it's just not like, 10 episodes of a Purge. But, yeah, it's like, what do they do? That would be cool if they end up with, like, a 2-hour TV movie, essentially.
Yeah, like
that was the Purge, at the end of every season.
Because what's funny is, based on the budgets that TV shows often operate on, like a 2-hour episode of a TV show could have about the same budget as the Purge films because those movies weren't exactly made on big budgets. So there's interesting possibilities there. Like I said, there's not too much more known about it, but it sounds like it's just going to be, the storylines leading up to the Purges versus the actual Purges themselves, which is a different direction than I would have anticipated them going in, but also it makes a little more sense because it gives them more scope to play with things and to build up longer running arcs that get set up and then like climax during the Purge. So
and one other approach that I could see them taking, if they decide not to stick with that is, you don't really like flashbacks and things too much, but almost cross cut between a Purge happening and then you kind of cut either forward in time or backwards in time. That may be a little more complicated and maybe to get a broader audience, but you could do some interesting things with that.
Yeah. It's really interesting to do with the Purge world is to show like the fallout from the Purge, because everything we see is always the Purge. So it'd be kind of interesting to see like the fallout from it, but I just feel like, to me, like I enjoyed the second and third Purge movies quite a bit. But I don't think I really am interested in watching the TV show.
Yeah, it just depends. It depends on where they're going to land with that as far as production value, casting, directing, it's...
what channel is it supposed to be on?
It is going to be on True TV. No, weird. Not really. But, if you shot it documentary style, that's how you could do one on the cheap for TV. Is just shoot it docu style.
Just shoot it like Parks and Rec or The Office. Everybody just does the Jim Halpert face of the camera while they're getting murdered.
Like, if I remember correctly,
I was just thinking more like Cops.
If I remember correctly, the Purge TV series I think is going to be produced by Universal, which owns like Sci-Fi and USA and stuff.
Well, if it's on USA, it'll probably be all right.
I can see that ending up on Sci-Fi. And to be fair to Sci-Fi, it seems like they've produced some stuff recently that people have enjoyed, and they're kind of some of the shows they're doing, I think, they're kind of starting to stretch on the quality end because they realize, 15, 20 years ago, there wasn't a lot of quality TV, and now you've got stuff like AMC and FX putting out things, and they're probably trying to realize like, oh, hey, it pays off to kind of one, put some money, and two, put some time into a project.
See, so it says it's going to run on both USA and Sci-Fi in 2018. So we'll keep an eye out for more information on that because that's not that far off since it's already May of 2017. But we'll have to keep an eye out for more news on that as it comes up. Another bit of brief news, and this is really, really brief. Fede Alvarez, the director of Don't Breathe and the Evil Dead remake from a few years back, or reboot, or whatever you want to call it, confirmed that a Don't Breathe sequel is still in the works. Somebody tweeted at him asking, please tell me there's Don't Breathe 2 oncoming, and then he responded, there is. So it sounds like, I know because they discussed there being a sequel and it focusing more on the character played by Stephen Lang, the blind man, like not a whole lot more like information is known beyond that, but it sounds like it's in the works. And the fact that the original one made over $150 million worldwide on a $10 million budget, I would assume they want to get back to that world as profitable as it was. So, I mean, like a lot of times with sequel stuff like that, you're like, oh man, it's going to be shit. But then if you're like the Purge movies got far better and improved drastically, in my opinion, from the first film to the second film. So maybe there is something to that type of premise that could be good. Just depends.
The second Purge is the best Punisher movie we've had yet. So.
Yeah, pretty much. So it's just like, will it be Fede Alvarez comes back, or is he just a producer and they bring in some other director and they only care about it? Or is it something that gets the full treatment? Like, who knows? But there will be some movement on a sequel, I'm assuming, but it sounds like it's still in the works. Then what was the other news? Strangers 2 is going to have Christina Hendricks in it, who was on Mad Men and a bunch of other stuff. She was in Drive, actually, which we talked about before. And yes,
version of that movie you just talked about. Just watch Your Next. That's the good version
of The Strangers. Well, The Strangers was very much a movie that was big at the time. Like, it was kind of when the home invasion flick kind of started coming back. And I remember being something that people talked about all the time because the original film had Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman in it. And it was basically just the people in the mask, like, doing the invasion, which was kind of parodied in Cabin in the Woods. Is one of the choices was, I forgot their call, but there was like doll faces or doll people or something. There was some group of people that was like a take on the Strangers character. So
the biggest issue with Strangers is like, if they've never been in your house and they try to get in, you have a big house, you have an advantage. Because you live there and you know where everything is. And that aggravated me from that movie.
What if they just do the Strangers versus Don't Breathe and do a crossover?
I would watch that.
The Strangers try to break into the blind man's house.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like just do it where and Don't Breathe. It's a bunch of kids who are just thieves, but let's do a serial killer breaking into John Wick's house. Or, a number of serial killers.
So when the Strangers break into John Wick's house, the movie's over in like 3 minutes.
Yes.
Because he's flipping around on their arms.
No. One of them has the puppy. So, it creates a lot of drama, and he can't just kill them indiscriminately.
So
that's the stuff I'm interested in because that's different.
So basically what I tried to do with Hazard, the short film released last year. So Strangers, the original came out in 2008. So this sequel is coming out it'll be coming out like 10 years later. Sequels that are that belated typically don't recapture the magic, but we'll have to wait and see.
Magic the first time around. So.
I didn't even see the first one. I was really interested in it. I thought the trailer looked pretty cool because it did look just like a straight horror film that looked decent, especially to compare to the stuff that was coming out at the time. But I just ended up missing it in theaters and just never ended up watching it.
Yeah, it was one of those things. I'm pretty sure it came out when I was still in high school. I was a senior, but I'm pretty sure it came out when I was still in high school, and we all went and watched it, and nobody liked it. It's like, if you can't even like entertain a bunch of like high schoolers, you're not doing a very good job.
Yep. So there's that. Let's see, what was the other news? And there's that one documentary that's coming out has to do with exorcisms and The Exorcist.
Oh yes, it is called The Devil and Father Amorth. I don't know. I can't remember if that's how you pronounce his name. William Friedkin, the director of The Exorcist. So he's doing a documentary that will look at actual exorcisms, specifically those carried out by Father Gabriel Amorth, aka the Dean of Exorcists. Says he was present for one such event that he later wrote about in Vanity Fair. So, having the director of The Exorcist do a documentary on actual exorcism, like, that's probably going to be pretty cool. That's definitely going to be a standout, I think, for sure. And I'm looking forward to that.
So
actually seems pretty interesting.
So are demonic possessions real? I'm going to go with no.
The show I wanted to do, I don't know if I talked to you guys. I think I did. The one reality show ideal I had, which, it's not like I'm thinking about reality shows, was to get priests to come in for exorcisms, convince them, and then actually have everything staged and have special effects, like practical effects and stuff, and just, record that. But then I was thinking, with all that you have to go through to convince them to do that, I don't know if they still do it, but, the process is very laborious, and you got to like prove all these things and do all this stuff. Like, you can never do that on a show.
Yeah.
I mean, actually fool them to coming there to perform it, and also too, a lot of people would probably hate you for that.
Well, you could always just fake it and get those like ghost guys to come, like the guy on the Travel Channel takes his shirt off and yells and
Hey, ghost hunters, don't be hating on them, dude. I can watch a lot of ghost hunters.
You mean you can watch where they have somebody in the other room like knocking on the wall or something?
Yeah, no, look, I don't care. It's like a guilty pleasure. I enjoy the hell out of that. So, because it's just a bunch of dude, and they're running around.
They need to do a dating show like The Bachelor in a haunted location.
With that guy.
So that when the couple's in the hot tub about to get down, they're like, did you hear something? Did you hear something?
Good.
So
let's
wait,
produce that.
Was that a boner noise?
Yes. A violent boner that's like creating like a slosh of water in the hot tub. The Bachelor.
The ghost boner.
The Bachelor, Waverly Hills. Actually, we should call them after the podcast. I'll take this out so that we can steal the idea. I bet they'd probably want like $1 million to record that there at Waverly Hills. But yeah,
no,
so
they're pretty.
So was there other news? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, let me see.
They're making a Rampage movie with The Rock.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in that. I mean,
I want to see, is it going to come out when the Godzilla versus King Kong movie comes out? Like, because that's what Rampage is. It's a ripoff of Godzilla versus King Kong, and then they got some other monsters in there. And then are they going to make a game version of the movie version of Rampage?
So the thing that's funny about Rampage is like you have, I mean, it's funny that The Rock is one of the biggest actors on the planet, but he's in that. And he's not necessarily always in the best movies, but he is probably one of the most popular people in Hollywood, and he can draw an audience. So it's funny that he ended up in Rampage and he didn't end up in
Kong Skull Island or something.
I mean, he did Doom, and then he was doing that Spy Hunter movie years ago, and they made a game of the movie, but the movie actually never came out. So I wasn't too surprised at that. And everybody thought San Andreas was going to be a Grand Theft Auto movie at first.
Where he just is like stealing people's bicycles and jetpacks and planes.
Yeah. So Exorcist is coming back for season 2. So
yes.
2 Exorcist related pieces of news. The prequel Leatherface is finally coming out in October. Sounds like, I think I saw that it was going to be a theatrical release. Turbo Kid directors are doing a movie called Summer of '84. I think it's about a 15-year-old conspiracy theorist who thinks a police officer neighbor might be the serial killer everybody's looking for. So yay to making conspiracy theorist a hero, possibly. Yeah. And then there's a Christmas horror film coming out called Better Watch Out. It used to be called Safe Neighborhood. I can't remember who is directing that. but it's coming out October 6th.
Yeah, I remember reading reviews of that from festivals. Oh, and then Scream Queens is getting canceled, so it will not be returning for season 3 on Fox, which is fine with me because I stopped watching season 2 because I just couldn't stand it. We discussed it before the podcast. I don't think we discussed it during. But yeah, the Scream Queens will be gone, and then MTV Scream is rebooting their cast, so those shows have not been working out necessarily as planned for those networks, those slasher TV shows. But yeah, so we'll have to see if Scream Queens gets repackaged anywhere or not. I mean, I don't know how much. I mean, because it's essentially just like another season of American Horror Story, but worse. So, with more forced humor and John Stamos and stuff in season 2. But so that show's gone. But I think that was all the news. So now I can move into our discussion of what we've been watching, and start off something I didn't really watch all of, but I watched part of because I was watching with a girlfriend, was the movie Warcraft. Has anybody seen that?
No. I mean, that was Duncan Jones, right?
Yeah, who did Moon and Source Code.
I was hoping that would turn out well, and I was interested because of him, but I didn't see it based on some of the reviews. But I've heard some people say it's not, not as horrible as initial impressions.
So when we were watching it, so I have not played the game. She had, and the first 45 minutes, I'm like, I'm lost. There's orcs and they're running around. There's people and they're running around, and there's so many characters being introduced, like one after another. I have no clue who anybody is. I have no clue why any of these locations are important or what any of this stuff is. 'Cause I didn't play the games. And
I probably played maybe 20 hours of it, and I couldn't tell you a thing about it.
It's just like when I was talking to Julie about it, I was like, the Game of Thrones, the show starts off, I mean, granted, it's a TV series, but in the first episode of that show, they did a better job of establishing like who the main characters were, despite there being so many of them. They did a pretty good job of that. Whereas this movie, I was watching it like an hour in, I was still like, okay, I'm falling asleep. I don't care what's happening here. Like I said, she enjoyed it, or enjoyed parts of it because she had played the games and stuff like that. So she knew all the stuff was. But it's just like, I think these movies have to stand on their own. They can't require you to have knowledge of all the stuff to enjoy it. And I get that there's Easter eggs that you enjoy more if you are aware of the source material. But if it's required to kind of get into the story to begin with, then that's kind of a failure on the movie because it needs to stand on its own. Yeah,
it's not bonus content for the game. Like, buy the game and you get this free movie.
Because like, even if you hated the Hobbit or the Lord of the Rings adaptations, like they at least were movies you could get into without having read the source material and know what's happening and enjoy them. Whereas Warcraft just felt like
Warcraft.
Yeah, I mean, granted, I didn't watch the entire movie, and she did say that it got better in the second half. I kept falling asleep, so it's just one of those things where a movie I had no real intention to see. It's just she had to watch it for something else. So it was another example of like video game movies have yet to break the curse for the most part. The best movies that are video game heavy or just game movies that are influenced, not like based on. So like District 9 played like a video game for the most part, or it played out like a video game and it worked. And there's been a lot of other movies that were kind of like Crank felt kind of like a video game.
Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah, there's a lot of movies that lived down.
That's getting a sequel too.
Yep, so the Tom Cruise film. So a lot of movies that take heavy influence from video games can be good. It's just when they try to adapt the video game plots into movies, it doesn't work out that well. Then other stuff on TV, I caught up on Better Call Saul and Fargo season 3 and Silicon Valley, and all those are awesome, and I'm enjoying them all. And it's not really horror, so I won't go too deep into them, but Better Call Saul had an episode that was pretty much all just dialogue in like a single room, and it was one of the best episodes of TV I've seen this year. Sweet. And Silicon Valley is continuing to be funny. All I'll say is not hot dog. if you've seen that.
I think they may have released an app.
They did. Yeah. So if you're watching that show, you know what that means. It's pretty hilarious. But yeah, that's all the stuff I had a chance to watch this week. So I guess, Dare, did you watch anything?
I watched it's something that just hit Netflix recently, I guess, Beyond the Gates.
Yes.
and I follow like Barbara Crampton and a couple other people I guess are has something to do with the film on Twitter, so I've seen a bunch of stuff about it through them too. And I've heard a lot of good things about it, and I watched it, and it was just boring, you know. Yeah. And this kind of goes to like you know talk about like the crazy John Wick fighting like the like that's interesting and different. When I watched this movie, it felt like to me that they just tried to cash in on like the nostalgic kick that like Stranger Things kind of started back up again. Mm-hmm. And it was a complete swing and a miss. Like it was really at all in it, you know, like one of the brothers was like, because the premise is like two brothers have a dad that owns a VHS store and he goes missing. So at some point they declare him dead, which they don't usually do that. But anyway, so they inherit the store and they find this videotape. In the 80s at one point in real life, there had been like board games you played while watching a VHS tape. Mm-hmm. So it's like based on that. And it's like, yeah, I understand like if somebody, I could see where somebody played one of those games in the 80s where they could like this film and maybe have some type of connection to it, but that doesn't mean it's good.
So is it like Jumanji?
No, Jumanji's way better.
But like, is it the same? Like, are stuff from the game coming out, or like, what's the game like? No, how does the game relate to the story?
Kind of like that, but in a way that doesn't really work. Like if they try to do it more like Jumanji
or Goosebumps,
or Goosebumps, they took like a template like that and kind of worked into it in this way, then it would have been really awesome. But the way that it was is like you just have Barbara Crampton like on the TV talking to them about it through the VHS tape. And then like they will roll stuff, and then like inadvertently what was supposed to happen would happen when it didn't make it. It just didn't work. And they would have like, I don't know, like because I heard a lot of good things about it, so I thought it was gonna be kind of a cool movie to watch. But my biggest thing is like with pacing. I will say they made it a nostalgic movie because it felt like something from the 80s because it was really boring. You know, like the way it was paced out. So it's like, well, if they were trying to make an 80s movie, they did like an awesome job because it's paced just like one. And I guess the biggest thing is like since the antagonist of the film's like a videotape, so there's like no sense of doom or anything for the characters, you know, where it's like.
It's more of like, a force and not a physical person.
Whereas, like with Jumanji, they were smart enough to, which is actually a good analogy. I'm glad you brought up. They had one of the characters be like Robert Williams' dad, who was like the central antagonist, right?
Yeah.
So like they didn't even have that in this. So they had just took a character from that and played it more. Then it would have worked a lot better. But it's more like a force. But it was like more like think of something. It's like. I don't know. It just didn't work on anything. Not for me. Maybe somebody else will watch it and really like it. But
so, was there anything that you kind of? I mean, were any of the actors kind of anybody stand out to you? Was the music good? Did it look good? Anything at all that you kind of?
The score was okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, it definitely tried to be 80s synth. You know, like maybe John Carpenter-ish. But even then, it just felt kind of redundant. Like that's the biggest thing to me is like the actors. Like nobody was good in it. Have any character you cared about, you're like, you know, if they all died horribly, you wouldn't care. Because, like, the brothers' relationship was weird, and then, like, they just didn't write them very well. So it's like,
I mean, that's the thing, too, with characters. Like, if you have good characters, then your characters can be doing absolutely nothing, and you still can enjoy the film.
Yeah.
You know?
And something that's really odd is... Like when Barbara Crampton was on the TV, you know, if anybody doesn't know, she's like in Reanimator and Chopping Mall and
Chopping Mall, and then she's been in more recent stuff like You're Next and
House of the Devil.
House of the Devil.
Right.
You're still, or no? Was she in the House of the Devil?
No, I'm thinking of nope. I'm thinking of
We're Still Here.
Oh my, Dee Wallace is who I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
But like, and she's still an attractive woman, but like in the film, they made it like really painfully weird dialogue to make sure that everybody that watched the VHS tape talked about how attractive she was. It was just like really forced. Like
maybe that was in our contract.
Yeah, I don't know if that was in her contract or what, but I was watching. It's like. It's just like the girlfriend walks in, she's like, oh, who's that hot piece of ass? And it's like, nobody talks like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it was
don't
like a
know.
really
I mean, I've
weird-
heard some conversations
Yeah.
like that.
No, but it was just like, like when you're like 13 and you're trying to sound
Mhm.
cool
Yeah.
and you say something. That's how it sounded. It's like, oh,
Check
God,
out the
you sound
butt
like you're
on
in
her.
middle
It's
school.
like she hasn't turned around yet. You can't see her butt.
It's very Steve Carell from 40-Year-Old Virginish, like the way they deliver the line. So it's like a bag of
Yeah,
sand.
man. She's saying, "Do me."
So
Yeah, it's
let's,
kind of like that.
so would you, even though this is on Netflix, if you've got Netflix free to watch, would you recommend anybody spending, or who would you recommend to watch this, if anybody?
I mean, like if you're a real avid VHS collector and you like that, it'd be kind of it might strike you a little bit, or if you're born in the 80s and you're very much an 80s kid, you might like it.
If you're stuck in the 80s, you mean?
Yeah, if you're like stuck in the 80s, if you're just like, or if maybe if you even played one of those VHS board games,
Yeah.
you give it a watch just because it has that. But I'm not going to recommend anybody to not watch it because it is on Netflix, so you've already kind of paid for it, So it's like, yeah, just if it seems like it interests you, give it a watch. But I wouldn't like if I had people over, I would not choose that movie to watch.
Yeah.
Like if I was going to show somebody horror, that wouldn't be it. I would steer clear of it. I would show them like Troll 2 over that.
Ooh, so
Always Troll 2, always the go-to movie.
Or if you ever watch with William, he will literally tell you that every single part in the movie is the best part. So if we ever review that and he doesn't give it a 10.
it's also because it was at a party I was hosting where I was a little bit intoxicated and everybody kept wanting to turn it off.
You were there, right, Sean? Weren't you there for that, Sean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and literally every scene.
Podcast.
Yeah. This is the best part. This is the best part. And it's like, well, if you believed him from that, then this movie was like an Oscar-worthy film. So
No, this wanted people to quit bitching. But so Derek, was that all the stuff you watched this week?
yeah, I'm pretty sure. I can't remember anything. Anything else I did was irrelevant. But yeah, that was the main thing I watched besides the stuff we're talking about tonight.
Speaking of Jumanji, isn't The Rock going to be in that too? Aren't they remaking that with him?
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be finished now. I think he's finished with that, and then he moved on to Rampage.
Yeah. Also, speaking of movie games, I just found out, or I'd heard that Street Fighter, the movie, the game, apparently, I guess somebody found out that Capcom execs were like in town for one night. So the screenwriter with whoever his buddies, producing partners or whoever, they wrote the script in one night. He simply just was like, yeah, I can do it. And he went to the arcade and watched his like son play it for like 2 hours and thought, yeah, I could do this. And then just wrote the script. So, that kind of answers a lot of questions about that movie.
Well, it was very much a kind of a cash grab, and they did get Jean-Claude Van Damme in it, so you got a big
Raul
action.
Julia.
Yeah, I mean, you had some big names in it for the time. And who's the guy that played Bison? Because he was an Addams Family too.
Yeah, Raul Julia. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That was his last role, I think.
He's great.
Everybody was like bummed that he went out on that note, even though he's fine in that movie.
Well, too, I think that's why
he knew what that was.
That's why they he had to wear like those the suits he wore had like a lot of bulk built into him, like shoulder pads and stuff, because he was sick at the time and was getting pretty thin. So you use like the costume and you're trying to bulk him up a little bit on screen. So you can kind of tell that in the movie.
I remember renting that, and it was Street Fighter, so I was into, because I was more Street Fighter than Mortal Kombat. I loved Mortal Kombat, loved that movie, that first one, as a kid, but I was also like equally as excited for Street Fighter because that's what I bought. I had on my Super Nintendo, and I played the most of on consoles. So I dug how dumb that movie was.
It's definitely not Mortal Kombat.
You think it's better than Mortal Kombat?
I think the reason is like I've always been more of a Mortal Kombat person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care for the new games, but when I watched that, like I was less disappointed. Plus, I had an actor and I knew at the time. Like I knew who Jean-Claude Van Damme was. So
yeah, Christopher Lambert was great in Mortal Kombat as Raiden. Yeah, so I did not watch Street Fighter this week, but now I kind of want to. I just caught up on Silicon Valley and Veep. Veep is both are still stellar, but and I have not caught up on Better Call Saul. I need to, but instead because you cannot rent Grindhouse anywhere, and I only own Death Proof because I wasn't, I liked Planet Terror, but I went to theaters to see that twice and was like, that's a long movie. So because those films came out by themselves first, and then later on when they came out as a full package, I think that's also when Death Proof was re-released on Blu-ray. Because I think I got it on DVD first, or maybe it did come out on Blu-ray, and I only have that one copy. Anyway, the only way to watch that is if you have Stars, if you don't have the disc, because you can't rent it anywhere. So because I subscribed to Stars for this, I watched that first episode of American Gods, and it was pretty interesting. Like it's a weird show. I think it's based on some books or something.
Yeah, graphic novel series.
Is it graphic novel? Okay, I didn't realize
I think
that.
so.
That would make more sense because honestly, the way they visualize some stuff, I was wondering, how that read on the page, because it was kind of so out there. Like something like I've only watched the first episode of Legion, and that show gets, real weird. This gets real weird in a different way. And it's like almost the closest thing I can think of is The Matrix. And not that like it's the same sort of people are inside a code or whatever, but it's almost just like it's almost like a fantasy also. Like it seems like there's rules to the world, but like you're being introduced to all this stuff, and it's like you don't know what to expect next, and you're ready for anything because like there's so much weird stuff that happens. So it's intriguing because of that. And Ian McShane is awesome in it. He was kind of the big draw. And then Brad Fuller is the showrunner who did Hannibal. And he pulled one of his directors, I can't remember his name, maybe David Slade, to direct a few episodes of this, who also worked on a lot of Hannibal. I think he also did like the Twilight Eclipse movie.
Yeah.
So
30 Days of Night and
which I didn't see 30 Days of Night, but
Hard Candy.
But it's on Stars. I haven't watched any of Stars' other original contents. I wish they would have had a little bit more money. Obviously it's not, and that's only coming from how impressive some, Legion is on a production scale. Game of Thrones and stuff like that. Like so much crazy stuff happens in this, but also too, the look of it looks fine, looks pretty good, but it still has a TV show quality. And me, I don't say complain about it, but I'm always like, I like watching a film. I like that production value. I like where everything feels like it is done exactly as intended. This, I feel like they probably had to stretch the resources, and it doesn't pull you out of it at all. But I could see this being done with more money, and it having just an extra level of sheen on it, and kind of and just production value. But that being said, it's not cheap looking at all. But yeah, the direction is fine. It's nothing stellar. Like I was kind of thinking, it made me look up the directors. I'm like, who else is directing this series? I hope it's not the same person every time. And honestly, another thing that was kind of a bummer is that it just seemed a little compressed. The stream I was watching, I don't know if that's Stars or what, but it just didn't look as crisp as watching a lot of shows. Like, even we went from watching Silicon Valley and Veep to American Gods, and American Gods looked like you're watching something, at least on my stream, looked like it was like I was watching a show with a compressed YouTube version of like 720p or something. I mean, it looked high resolution. It just looked compressed.
Yeah.
And stuff like, all the stuff on HBO Ustream looks like so pristine. And you've really got to pixel peep that to see a difference between Blu-ray if it's nothing too dramatic. But, that's just kind of like technical stuff. But still, it was stuff I was paying attention to while I was watching it. And I wish it just went a little bit further. But the story and all that, like I'm interested in the characters. You can almost think of something like John Wick, where they're adding in layers to this universe and characters the whole time. And I don't want to spoil anything, but it's very much not grounded in reality. But at the same time, also feels like there's a world built. It's not just everything's willy nilly or anything like that. So I'm very interested in that actually, and I will definitely be watching more of that. I hope it's good, but there's some gore in there. With Brad Fuller, the Hannibal show, we've talked about that, the level of gore in there, since you covered that, William, every week. But definitely some good gore scenes that would be straight out of Mortal Kombat. Like somebody gets sliced in half and it's slow motion and somebody's looking from a sort of a distance, not too far, but literally the body is splitting and like the skull and spine are like flying in the air, like wiggling as blood's flying out everywhere. So, yeah, they're definitely taking the R rating or the not rated abilities of this show to full advantage after coming off of Hannibal. But yeah, other than that, I can't really think of much. That Grindhouse was 3 hours, so that was my Saturday night watching that.
All right, so we can move into...
And you watch Guardians too, right?
Oh, yes. I saw Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, finally. Saw that last week, and I enjoyed it a lot. It was an entertaining movie. It's always awesome to see Kurt Russell and something. It's funny seeing Kurt Russell in that and then watching Death Proof again. But I think that I think a lot of people love the first film and were so surprised that it was as good as it was that the sequels, no matter what they did, probably wouldn't live up to that original one just because it kind of came out of nowhere for a lot of people. But I think that I need to rewatch them both to figure out which one I like better. But I still enjoyed it a lot. But I think that the one thing they did with this movie that fixed or addressed the villain problem that a lot of the Marvel films have is having Kurt Russell in there and the different stuff that happens with all the universe and Michael Rooker and all the stuff that happens. Like they gave it less of just like a faceless dude in blue paint type bullshit.
It really does. Like I said, if you think about this movie and the second one as one movie, it makes this one much stronger too. Like the thing about me is the minor spoiler, the team is not together the whole time. And I feel like I miss that team, that unit feel. And I wanted to see them together as a team because that's what I enjoy, kind of their banter and just everything and how they work together. And because they're split up through the middle part of this film, that's what I kind of loved about the first one is they got together and they were basically just together once you got to see them kind of break out of that prison. So, but if you think about it as one film and you're like, okay, you've got that part and then this part is something a little bit different, it is much more enjoyable. And a lot of the story stuff from the first one, or like maybe the minor story stuff, it really pays off in this one. And this film makes that first film stronger, I think. And it's a really good experience looking at it as a whole, I think. And I really do think it's good to call it like almost volume 2 because it does feel like one story. It's just not part 2. This isn't like you're watching Lethal Weapon and they're watching Lethal Weapon 2 and it's just like, okay, here's another story with these guys. It really does feel like part of the same story. I mean, just like Kill Bill Volume 1, Volume 2. I assumed they were calling it Volume 2 just based, kind of playing off the musical aspect and kind of importance in these films, but it really is about this being like one big story.
Yeah. So, and two, like I don't not giving spoilers of who the villain is in the film. Just I'm saying the overall cast they have in it, just I think elevates it beyond a lot of the movies that the Marvel Universe has, where they just have some like BS villain that you don't care about, and for the most part, is like the Marvel Universe only has like one or two like. Even though they've had some really good actors like Jeff Bridges in the films, the first Iron Man, a lot of the villains are kind of one note.
Yeah.
And, it gets even worse in some of the films where, like, remember, like Ant-Man, like the Yellow Jacket or the name, like a lot of those villains are kind of forgettable.
Yeah, it's often the weakest thing in those Marvel films because they make the character, they're so good at making the leading characters so strong that they just kind of leave the villains to the wayside, and they're just they're almost just like a MacGuffin for something for the characters to do, and so they have some sort of goal. But yeah, definitely Guardians kind of it totally goes against the grain on a lot of that because it is thematically important, and because of that, it makes it the best part of that film, I think, is the last act. When oftentimes in Marvel films, that's the worst part of those films.
Yep. So that's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. It's out in theaters now, still doing well at the box office. But yes, now we're going to move into our review of Grindhouse, which is from 2007. And like I said, this is a movie that was 2 movies, pretty much full-length movies, plus fake trailers in between them. And the faux trailers were for Machete, Thanksgiving, which is like the Eli Roth fake trailer for like the really cheap, like lo-fi 80s Thanksgiving-based slasher. Edgar Wright did one for Don't, which was kind of like a take on like how they would have a movie that was released in Britain under one name and released in the U.S. under another name, and the title and the trailer were cut in the U.S. to the point that you couldn't tell what the movie's about. It was like edited into incoherence. And then Rob Zombie did like the She-Werewolves of the SS or whatever that had Nicolas Cage in it. And then like I said, there's like Machete. So there's like, you know, all the trailers and all the stuff around this. When it came out, I was super excited for this because it's supposed to be a double bill movie with Rodriguez and Tarantino at the time, who were like my favorite filmmakers in 2007. It's like when I was early 20s. And like they had described the Planet Terror as just like the zombie movie. And then all the trailer stuff I'd seen, it was more in the vein of like Return of the Living Dead or something than Dawn of the Dead or something more serious. It was more of that, you know, kind of 80s-ish vein. And then Tarantino's was described as a slasher with the killer using a car starring Kurt Russell. So just those descriptions alone is like had me all in. Mm-hmm. And I went and saw the movie in theaters. They released it in April, which I thought it was kind of being like counter-programmed to it. I think it came out even like on Easter weekend or something.
Yeah.
And I think that was a huge misstep. And overall, like before you even get to the movies themselves, just like as an overall experience, I think the fact that it's over 3 hours and they released it in April, I think that hurt it a lot. I think if they had trimmed down both of the segments to be more around an hour, and then all the trailers and stuff, like it all came to like 2 hours and 15 minutes, somewhere in that range, and you put it out in September or August, like when you can get it on the drive-in theaters that still exist and make it like a big thing, I think that would have been the way to go and getting people, you know, getting butts and seats to watch it. But releasing it in April is counter-programming when it's over 3 hours long. I don't know that was the best.
Yeah, I think they really wanted to sell that experience. You know, they really wanted to give, and like I mentioned to you, like I was excited that it was like essentially 2 full films at the time because I didn't want it to be some like halfway thing and just kind of, you know, it is a gimmick, but I didn't want it to be just a gimmick. And they kind of went full bore, but that was, you know, financially not the right decision. And really, like, yeah, I agree too. Like, have one each be like an hour long, you know, and have your fake trailers and stuff like that. But I think, you know, for that, they probably would have had to written the films with that in mind because Rodriguez is, I think you can pull stuff out. Obviously, he does that before you get into that third act. And it's cool and it kind of works because that one just moves. But like Death Proof is a very deliberate film, and I think it would really change the dynamic of the story to its detriment. But if he would have written around, you know, if he would have written with that in mind, like, okay, there's going to be one of these versions that's only an hour long, so I'm going to not go with this format or whatever, then yeah, I think that probably would have been the better decision, even though I love, you know, Death Proof as it is now.
Yeah, and like I said, too, the overall movies, like, it's so funny that the movies themselves at the box office weren't that successful, but the overall effect it had on cinema was pretty big. And so, Derek, did you see this in theaters when it came out or no?
No, I'm pretty sure I watched it with you the first time.
I went and saw it. I think I saw it in theaters with Evan, and I later got a hold of like a copy when I bought it, and I think you watched it when I still lived at home.
Yeah, I watched it when because I watched it when you had a copy of it at the house.
Yeah, so I saw it in theaters. In the theater I went to, there was not many people there. Like, I went with my friends, and there weren't many people there. And I just remember like it being built up and having a lot of hype around. I think it's something that would do. If they release it today, I think you would take a different strategy and do like a slow rollout release and try to make a thing out of it, and have it at the more like indie or art house theaters where they do stuff like that. granted, I'm not sure how much money you can make doing things that way, but this seems primed to be one of those things. They'd have like those dumb Q&A live stream video things after or something.
Yeah, I just think too, like you said though, being like almost 3 hours. That like I when I go to the theater, I don't want to be in there for 3 hours.
Like the ideal
You know?
environment, the ideal environment for that type of movie, for that type of experience, is to have it at a theater that sells beer and that sells food and stuff, and then in between the movies, you get a break to go get concessions, use the restroom,
intermission,
and then you come back and you get the fake trailers to bring you back into it, and then you start the second film. Like, I think that would probably, to me, would have been a better experience because that's more how I would handle having people over for a party and watching movies.
Yeah, I mean, they could have, like you said about the making money thing. It's just I had to step away for a second, so I may have missed. You may have said this, but release both the films separately. Say you're going to release both the films separately in theaters at a later date, but just do a limited run in those specialty theaters that is the double bill version, So you get that niche crowd that'll go see that and make a night out of it, and that will spend 3 hours. And then later on, you've got the other people that'll pick and choose and just like spread them out, within like 2 or 3 weeks of each other, bring out one and then bring out one 2 weeks later or something.
Yeah, because they could have easily released them like September or October. Because I think you probably would have released Death Proof first and then Planet Terror in October because it's a little bit more horror skewed. Even though I know Tarantino talked about Death Proof being like a slash for the car, that's not really what it is. The first section kind of is. I guess so just like that was his overall thoughts on the experience of the movie Grindhouse as a whole. And it's one of those things where, like you said, like after the movie came out, a lot of times you could just buy the individual movies themselves, not the the overall Grindhouse package. I have the Grindhouse Blu-ray, which is just the theatrical release, like exactly how it was shown in theaters. I do not have the individual releases.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the individual releases?
Yes, I've seen like the Death Proof where it has like the lap dance in it and some of the other stuff.
Yeah, the black and white scene where he licks her feet. Full spoilers for these too.
Yeah, full spoilers for these.
Yeah, it's been 10 years, so.
But I haven't seen the Planet Terror full one just because I was not as hot on that. Like I went to the theaters to see this twice. The first, when it came out, it was our friend Junior's wedding. That was his wedding day.
Yeah.
And I remember like he told me, he sent me the thing or told me, and I'm like, hey man, that's the day Grindhouse comes out, right?
He's like, what's Grindhouse?
I was like, he knew because, I don't know if we talked about it, but like, that was a big thing when it was coming out. Like you said, a lot of people were very excited for it. And I was too. And I was like, all right, I'm definitely going to see Grindhouse and then go to your wedding afterwards. That's what I did. Nicole and I went to see Grindhouse and then we rushed over to I think Jeffersonville is where he had his wedding.
Yeah.
And I ended up seeing this twice in theaters. And the second time I saw it, I went back because of Death Proof. Like I loved that segment so much. And yeah, it was not in my mind, it was very heavily marketed, or at least the message, not marketed, but the message was he was making a slasher, but instead of a knife, it was a car, and it was a stunt man with a Death Proof car. And I was expecting that. I didn't get it. But for me, like, we don't have to jump into that right now. But for me, like, I got a physical reaction out of that movie, like in the theater, sitting on the edge of my seat. No, like in my stomach, and like sitting on the edge of my seat because they had also talked about so much how, his segment, he was doing it. He was doing real stunts, real crashes. Zoe Bell was Uma Thurman's stunt woman, and he cast her in the film so she could do her own stunts. And I think that was like one of the best decisions he made, next to casting Kurt Russell. And because I knew those things, when she's like sliding around the front of the car and all that, like I had, a physical reaction and like I felt that danger. And can't really think of any other movies that actually give me a physical, like, gut feeling when I watch them. And I still, watching it again the other day, still had part of that reaction. And like, because of that, and I know that doesn't work for everybody, like I think this film was like a huge achievement because it did something to me like no other film has.
One, too, like, so just reading some of the trivia on the movie. So when they were casting Death Proof, Tarantino attempted to cast John Travolta, Willem Dafoe, John Malkovich, Mickey Rourke, Ron Perlman, Bruce Willis, Kal Penn and Sylvester Stallone. I think Sylvester Stallone was the one I remember hearing the most about before they ended up getting Kurt Russell. And that would have been,
I think would have been interesting as well.
like, Stallone would have been interesting to see in that.
I would have loved saw Stallone, but like just that would have been just him dressed exactly the same way from Cobra and almost the same damn character in that movie.
Hey,
Because you haven't watched
You want to drink?
haven't watched Cobra, you need to go watch Cobra because we need to cover Cobra one time because it's something different. Yeah, have y'all seen it?
I think I've seen bits and pieces on TV, maybe
God, it's
like a long time ago, but
like
no.
it's. Yeah,
I know the cover. I know the box art for sure.
Cover Cobra.
Well, and two, so I guess, like, just to go through the movies, we can go through chronologically in order. We can go through first Planet Terror and then go to Death Proof. So Planet Terror, when I first saw this movie in theaters, I was higher on Planet Terror than it was on Death Proof, because at the time, what I think Rodriguez did with Planet Terror was delivered what he thought a Grindhouse movie was, with modern, technology and all the kinds of stuff like that. So he basically just took what he thought it was and made his version of it. So, I mean, honestly, you weren't seeing movies in the 80s and 70s that looked like that or did that amount of stuff just because the effects weren't there. Maybe the box art has some crazy stuff like that on it, like a girl with like a machine gun leg or something. But the movies themselves of that era did not have that.
Yeah.
And his movie had far more action and things happening on the screen in the movie than movies that era actually had. Just because at the time, without the, digital cameras and effects and all that stuff, it was a lot harder.
Just the budget too, like a lot of them would be a couple, big action pieces or somewhat big, and then people sitting around talking, like it is in Death Proof.
Yeah. So the thing I always like after, it's like, so Rodriguez made his interpretation of what Grindhouse films were, which is what everybody kind of does now in these independent films. And then Tarantino actually made a movie you could have released in like 1970 something and it would have fit right in. So, I mean, that's the big difference between the two. And so my opinion's kind of flipped on them since I originally saw that in 2007. And so Death Proof, like, overall, the tone of it is fun, and it's light. And it was zombies before they were completely passe and had been done to death in every single form and format you could think of. Because it was 2007, so you'd had Shaun of the Dead and the Dawn of the Dead remake and 20 Days Later and stuff like that, but you didn't have the Walking Dead TV series. You didn't have Sci-Fi's Z Nation. You didn't have all these hundreds or maybe thousands of independent zombie films out there. And so this is...
Apparently, the stuff I was reading, he wrote the first 30 pages of that script while shooting The Faculty.
Yeah.
And he was talking to Josh Hartnett and Elijah Wood, and they were like on board for it to be in it. And he was like, look, zombie films, they're dead right now, but they're going to come back. We need to be the first one to come back. And it just never happened until this idea came. And then he had that script laying around, at least the first 30 pages. So it would have been interesting to see if this would have came out before, like 20 days later.
If that came out in 99 or 2000.
Yeah, like what that would have changed as far as the way people approached zombie films and where they would be now.
Yeah, because that's definitely not a grounded approach with any seriousness to it. It's got a girl with a machine gun as a leg who can like spin around and shoot it despite the fact she's not pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
Or
I just remember, like, when I first watched this, I was kind of like you. I like Planet Terror more, and that's because it was more... I was also 17 when it came out.
It was just faster paced.
Surprised, like, there's more visually, there's more action. There's not a lot of downtime in it. It moves pretty quick.
No.
And there is, like, you have a machine gun and she, like, launches a grenade and flies around. And it just, there's ridiculous stuff in it, So whether or not it's a great movie or not, there's still enough there to keep you interested, and it doesn't really bog down. It doesn't get too boring. That's me.
Go ahead.
Things in me in a movie is like, can you keep me interested? Because you have to keep me interested, and this one does that. Like, I think William's right too. I still think that this is what he thought a Grindhouse movie was supposed to be, and that's how he tried to make it. Because it's really schlocky, but it's like almost to the it's like, I think if this had been made in the 90s, it would have fit a little bit better, because remember the 90s like the extreme period. So it's like, this is like that, but to the extreme.
It like sold on the promise of a lot of those posters.
Yeah, because like I said, those movies from the 80s and 70s and 60s, and a lot of times you have these kind of outrageous posters, and the movie itself would never even have anything in the movie approaching what the poster was. So this movie actually delivered on the poster of a girl with a machine gun leg, like, oh, it actually happened. And then the cast in the movie, for it to have been what it was, and, you know, in retrospect, is very, very full of people that, you know, so you have Josh Brolin, you have Rose McGowan, Freddie Rodriguez, who I don't remember seeing a lot of stuff before or after that.
He was in 6 Feet Under, I think.
6 Feet Under, Lady in the Water. I mean, he's been in a bunch of stuff, but then you had Josh Brolin, Jeff Fahey, Michael Biehn, Bruce Willis. Then of course you had Tarantino in it, and they had Fergie from the Black Eyed Peas in like a small part. So for it to be kind of like a little niche genre movie, it did have a pretty good cast in it, with people who go on to be bigger stars eventually, and you know, people like Jeff Fahey and Michael Biehn, who are, you know, genre staples, and then Bruce Willis, who's, you know, in a bunch of stuff.
It was like the best cast for that type of film, because again, all the gimmicky films after that, they only have one person, like a Barbara Crampton. You know, they only have like the one person. They have the one person that is barely in it, and then this is just like hit after hit. You know, is in the film. Michael Parks. You know, it's just tons of people.
Yeah, like in a lot of those movies now, you'll have like something like a Michael Biehn in it for like 10 minutes because they could only afford to fly him out for like one day of shooting and put him up and pay him, and then they go back out and then they can put him on the poster or something. As opposed to this movie, like Michael Biehn is in it, you know, pretty decent chunk of time, but you also have Bruce Willis in it, who's a big star. Then you have people.
I'd forgotten he was in this. He walked up and like started. I was like, oh my god, like, because it's been 10 years since I saw this. I click through and see it on TV occasionally, but would only watch like maybe 5 minutes at a time.
Yeah, so you have a bunch of people that are in it like that, and that, you know, adds to its appeal. And two, this was shot on a digital camera. I think it was shot on one of the Panavision Genesis cameras at the time, like an HD camera, as opposed to Tarantino's is actually still shot on film. So this one was very much just replicating what Grindhouse movies could have been. And
again, to kind of, you know, back up Rodriguez's approximation, you know, he did the digital scratches in that, because he's very much into digital effects and everything. And apparently, I think Tarantino's films, they actually scratched up the film. To, you know, make that effect legit on there.
Which I'm sure a lot of people at the studios are not okay with that risk, but
I mean, it could have been a print. You know what I mean? A reproduction of the print.
Yeah, but I'm sure that's still a far more.
Once they did that, they loaded it in and then went from there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they did like the digital masters or whatever, but I'm sure that's a more time consuming thing than just throwing on a filter in your Avid or whatever they used. But
Proof was shot in one take. And then after it was over, they scratched up the film. It was the only copy of it.
Well, and
it's real quick, the digital camera too. Did you read about how Josh Brolin, he asked Rodriguez, I guess on set, if he could borrow a video camera to shoot his audition tape for No Country for Old Men.
Yeah. And
Rodriguez ended up letting him use the camera they shot the film on. And I think Tarantino also directed him during that. And then I think somebody else was also helping him out with that as well. So like he had a pretty kick-ass audition tape. And apparently the Coens asked, like the first thing they asked when they saw it was like, who lit this? And, you know, who shot this for you?
Yeah. And two, so it's the, in that movie, in Death Proof, Tarantino is listed as the cinematographer or the director of photography.
Yeah, I remember that being a big thing too. And I thought that was awesome that, you know, he also was kind of going on the cheap. You know, he was kind of doing it like a lot of independent people do. I mean, not always, even if it's an independent or really cheap production, doesn't mean you're going to have a DP and a director being the same person, but a lot of people take on double duties. So I think it was cool. And I think that's a good looking movie.
Well, and two,
awesome.
There's a lot of parts in it that replicate the types of shots that would be in those types of movies, just like the shot of like the car driving around or kind of like handheld stuff or stuff that moves a little bit. Like it all kind of replicates that feel a little bit. So yeah, so Death Proof, like the movie has like different, like you have like the section where like it has like the missing reel, which is like during a sex scene, you jump cut, 15 minutes ahead.
Planet Terror. Sorry, you said
Planet Terror. Planet Terror. Well, both of them do that, but Planet Terror. Sorry, I was off track there. It has the one where they're in like the barbecue place, and then you have like we're about to do a sex scene, and then it jumps to the building's on fire. They've had a big kerfluffle, and the police officer or the sheriff, whatever that Michael Biehn is, tells him to give all the guns to the El Rey character, and then from that point forward, then you have them get taken in by the military, and then they find out what's actually going on, and you have the cheesy ass line of like when El Rey, when they're killing Bruce Willis's character, he's like thank you for your service, sir, or something like that, as they're like shooting him and stuff. And of course Tarantino has to have a scene where he's gonna threaten rape, and then he has like gooey balls and his wiener's falling off and stuff.
That's a good memorable scene. I remember people in theaters having a big reaction to that.
So like the movie up to the military point, and two, that's funny is that's kind of the structure a lot of those like zombie films have. Even like 20 Days Later, you kind of have all the stuff that's out in the world, and then you end in a military installation for the end part, for the third act. So that movie followed that same kind of trajectory. Overall, I think it's kind of a fun, goofy movie, but I don't know it's aged as well. Just rewatching it now, like once you've watched it and the shtick, all the shtick of like the machine gun leg and all that type of stuff, it doesn't necessarily hold up as well as Death Proof, which I think is more driven by the dialogue and stuff like that.
And those moments, Planet Terror has so many moments, like moment after moment. But Death Proof has a few like incredibly strong moments or sequences that, the film builds up to those sequences. Or Death Proof, it's kind of just, almost like a comedy. It's just joke after joke, but this is like moment after moment or gimmick after gimmick. But at the same time, like I said, when I saw this first in theaters for the first time, sitting down to watch the film, I was kind of just waiting for Death Proof. And I was sitting there to enjoy. I liked Robert Rodriguez a lot. I liked his, all of his films pretty much prior to that. But at the same time, I wasn't on the level that I was with Tarantino, especially coming off of Kill Bill.
Yeah.
So while I was enjoying it, I was glad I was also getting Death Proof second. But I was also really looking forward to it. And I liked it. When I saw it after it was over with, I enjoyed it, and I thought it was pretty good. And it was maybe around about what I expected from him. I think maybe I was wanting a little bit more. And then like I watched Death Proof, blew my socks off, went to see it again. Second time, I was like literally just waiting for Planet Terror to be over with. And I was kind of like, okay, just come on. Just, I enjoyed it, but, and I didn't hate watching it again at all. But I hadn't really watched it since then. So, and I had always just thought, I don't need to really watch that movie again. I might revisit it. It might be kind of cool. But this time, I was watching it and I was enjoying it a lot more than I remembered. And I think maybe now because it isn't like I'm sitting there waiting for Death Proof, or I'm comparing it too much to that and kind of just enjoying it for what it is. Like I had a lot better time watching it. And I think my wife and I, like I said, we went to see that originally and stuff. We've talked about it over the years and just like, yeah, it's not, Planet Terror is just not that great, really. It's fine, but whatever. And I've watched Death Proof like 100 times, and she's seen it a bunch as well. And she loves that film. But like, as I was thinking, yeah, this is actually like pretty good. Like there's so many good moments, and he built there's so many great characters, and all those characters that you're introduced like in the first 20 minutes of the film, when it jumps from like, the doctors and then El Rey and Cherry and stuff, and Michael Parks and is it TJ that owns the barbecue place?
Or yeah, just the Jeff Fahey character.
JT, yeah. Anyway, all those are so good they could have had their own movie almost. All those pairings, and he has so many great character pairings and stuff like that. And there's so much going on. The crazy babysitter twins, and I appreciate that. But anyway, I was like thinking like, hey, this is better than I remember. My wife looked at me and she was like, yeah, this movie actually isn't that terrible. Like she was having the same thoughts as me.
Well, I mean, think too, like I said, it was fun, and I think that you've seen so many movies trying to accomplish that in the wake of it that failed. So
exactly, and that's another thing too. Watching it, like I said, it sparked my memory. Like, oh yeah, this set off a whole chain of films. And now watching this, I'm like, even though this isn't my favorite one of the two, none of those gimmicky knockoffs even touch this film. They don't even come close, I think, to Planet Terror. Like Hobo with the Shotgun was all right. I liked moments of that, but that was just kind of a lot of gimmick there. And I'm not saying it was bad at all. Like I remember some moments of that fondly, but I think I wasn't giving Planet Terror enough credit all these years really until revisiting, especially looking at it again compared to a lot of the things that were made in the wake of that.
Yeah, so then there's the trailers in between. So I think the opening one was Machete, and then between they have some of the other trailers. So I think those, definitely added to the experience. And all those you can find on YouTube at this point if you want to watch those. You don't have the copy of Grindhouse. But yeah, so moving from Planet Terror to Death Proof. So this was the one that everybody think was like, everybody was excited for the Rodriguez segment, or at least a lot of the people who were his fans at the time were. But I think the Tarantino movie was the one that everybody actually wanted to see. Just because that, like I said, the promise of doing a slasher with a car was something that hadn't really been done, and you knew that with Tarantino doing it was going to be something different. Mm-hmm. Because that was still when he was on a huge hot streak of, he'd had Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, then you had like the Kill Bills. So you had all this stuff building up. And a lot of people were, the Kill Bills in and of themselves were redoing like those action films, like the Hong Kong action films, stuff like that. And so then you had Death Proof, which had Kurt Russell in it, which everybody's excited about. And it had a really good cast, too, because when you look at it, it had Rosario Dawson, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Jordan Ladd, a bunch of other people that were, in like genre stuff or big, movies at the time. And so that was the one everybody's excited for. And the movie, I think a lot of people initially may have been taken aback because it didn't deliver exactly what they expected. And the movie started out kind of slow, but it built towards something for sure, and then had some kind of like extreme gore. So, yeah. So, Derek, did you have thoughts on Death Proof?
Yeah, like I said, I think a lot of this has to do with my initial reaction watching it from when I was 17. And I don't think Planet Terror is an overall better film, but I think it's easier to watch, because there's so much going on in it. Whereas this one, it's not a super slow burn, but it's Tarantino-ish. It's got a lot of dialogue in it, and it kind of loses me a little bit, and I think it's always weird seeing Kurt Russell as a villain too, I think that's one of the strange things to get used to when you're watching this, because I'm not used to seeing him in that type of role.
Well, too,
I love that though, and it comes down to if you like the girls, you know what I mean? Like if you like those characters, and I did. Like I liked them, and I liked the second group better than the first. But it's definitely a thing of, are you in on them or not?
Well,
because go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like watching this movie today in 2017 versus 2007. The place the world is at today makes this movie more relevant than ever today than it was in 2007, with the whole like men's rights stuff and Meninist and the MRAs and like all the stuff that's on the online social media sphere of that type of community, toxic male masculinity and stuff like that. It's always existed, but now there's a name for it and people that actively like campaign in favor of it. Whereas in 2007 it was more of just like, those people weren't on the internet as much. But it's just funny, like it seems like this movie is more relevant now than it was when it came out in terms of like the Kurt Russell character. Well,
Planet Terror, they did talk about how Bruce Willis killed Osama bin Laden. So, and that was before he was killed. So,
Yeah. Where in the world does Osama bin Laden?
And I was thinking about this movie in a different way also, like his approach to it. I mean, I always felt like, in my mind, it almost seemed like Death Proof was two films in and of itself. It was even that the first segment is even scratched up more. It feels dirtier, a little bit more lo-fi. There's not as much budget, as it were, in a crash. It is a lot of talking and then the crash. And the second one almost feels like it's another film, like it's a restart, and it kind of just throws you into it. And the chase sequence is much longer, and you get a new set of girls. And I think that's what I loved about it too, that it really throws you off in that, one, you expect it to kind of have the normal format, and it kind of does with Vanessa Ferlito, I think her name is. Ferlito. She's, she is the almost like going to be the final girl, where she kind of, she's paying attention to him. She sees his car. She kind of knows not to trust him. Something's up, and they're talking about even going to the lake or the cabin or whatever. And you expect maybe, hey, is this where it's going to go? And then it ends up, no, that's not what happens at all. They all just die at once, and then you restart. And really too, like that whole sequence, it sets up the character of Stuntman Mike and kind of what his MO is. And Michael Parks talks about him getting off on it. So I've also read that was kind of like Tarantino's version of Psycho, when they kind of give a little exposition on what Norman Bates was doing at the end of the film. When they're discussing, oh yeah, his mother's been dead, he was dressing up. That was their version of it. And apparently, I think they shot Stuntman Mike masturbating in the car upside down. But that obviously that's not anywhere to be found. I don't think there's any deleted scenes either. But yeah, like I really like that kind of reset, because as Grindhouse as a whole, like Planet Terror, they kill the dog, they have the kid shoot himself, they kill all those girls at once. So really, as this buildup, by the time you get to Rosario Dawson, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and that group of girls, like you're ready for anything to happen, and you're expecting them to all die, kind of. And I think it's so satisfying when it flips the script. And I know, William, you kind of were a little turned off when Kurt Russell turns into basically like a little bitch.
Yeah.
But I love that they flipped the script on that, and it is like the woman empowerment film, and where like he. Is he also doing it because he wants to, is that what he gets off on? Like feeling empowered and like he is dominant, when really he's like on the inside, like a whining little bitch, because that's what a lot of those people are that for some reason, are insecure for whatever reason.
Yeah. They have all these insecurities and build up this rough exterior.
Yes. Yeah.
And then once you crack the shell or create a little bit of cracks in the base, what they are, just all falls apart, and you just see that they're a man child. And
like, has there ever been, and I know this isn't a direct slasher, but this, that was in his mind. Has there ever been a slasher villain like that, where as soon as he gets a scratch, he just like flips out, and then he is the one being chased? Like I couldn't think of any that came to mind.
Maybe the end of Scream, the original one, with like the Matthew Lillard character. Yeah. He's like a little bit, because he's like crying. He's like, oh, my parents are gonna be so mad. Yeah, but also too, he wasn't. I mean, granted, I guess he was behind a mask, but the way they built up Kurt Russell as being this, he calls himself a wolf. It's like he's just. I mean, he's a creepy guy, and he's just the scenes with him and Rose McGowan, like. One of my favorite scenes in film is, when he's got her in the car and he looks at the camera. Then we go to the cross section, and he's like, which way you going, left or right? And she says right. He says, wish you were going left, because you wouldn't start getting scared until later. Like that is one of my favorite moments. Like the way he built him up, and then the second act, you're not with him anymore. You're with the girls, except for the kind of the deleted scene that's in black and white, where he like licks Rosario Dawson's foot. Yeah, just being a creepy stalker.
Yeah, like, which I think that scene is great too. Like I love that full version of that film. Like you're not really with him. He's always in the background or whatever, and you're just with the girls, and you're able to focus on them and get to know them. And then just, this is like a different set of girls, Zoe Bell, she's like the cat, and they get pissed. Like, let's kill this fucker. Like all that is like incredible to me. Not including Zoe Bell doing her own stunts and hanging on the front of the car. Like I expected a cool car chase and stuff. And I think they may have shown her on the front of it a little bit, but the extent and the torture they put her through and knowing that, yeah, she's on the front of that car. It's not a stunt double. It's not a dummy. Like, he did this as real as possible. They had some wires and stuff to connect that I think they green screened out, but that's still very dangerous. You know, driving those cars down, you know, down those roads at that speed with her on the front of it, sliding around and stuff. Like, it just, like I said, it gives me a reaction that no other film has ever done before, and I'm surprised it still does, really. And like, because of that, like, it hits highs that nothing else does, and it does something special that no other Tarantino film does. Like, I'm really glad that he did this with this film, because he wasn't just making, you know, a cutesy, you know, slasher film that followed a typical format that had some Tarantino dialogue. But I did, you know, you don't expect him to do that though. But Rodriguez kind of just did what you expected almost.
Well, and two, like, one thing that you have to look at this movie in the wake of the Fast and the Furious franchise becoming what it's become is that the car chase in this and all the stunts are all practical versus movies now where they shortcut and use CG, which is why everybody, or at least, you know, we're so excited about Baby Driver, the new Edgar Wright film, because it looks like it's all going to be practical car chases and things like that. So you watch this movie and you see all this real, you know, physical car hitting a car with someone on it, cars driving through other cars and wrecking into them. And you have all this stuff, and it's not like a heavily composited shot with a bunch of digital effects stitching together what's happening. And so you know that there's only two cars really in the majority of it till the kind of the end of their chase. But there's more visceral impact to it because it's real, and it's shot in a way where it, you know, doesn't feel like you don't see somebody step on the pedal of the gas pedal. Then you see like a CGI explosion of gas as it's going through the engine and stuff. Like, you don't see that. You see like
But that's what they want to see.
Now, just imagine during the chase, as this is all going on, then you see like a Supra go by that has Paul Walker and Vin Diesel in the passenger seat, and then Vin Diesel just punches like the top off so that it's like open top, and then he stands in the door and jumps into the car with Kurt Russell and starts beating him up with stuntman Mike. And then like the car crashes and it blows up, and then Vin Diesel crawls out and he's like, "Hey, we're famous."
But it's a CGI. It's a CGI Vin Diesel that looks like the one from Blade 2, just hopping around in the car.
And then he's like, "We're family now." And then they all drink Coronas.
You talking about the way it's shot too, like, that's another big thing I really appreciate, is that it's not a car chase cut with 15 different angles. The way he takes certain long shots, you know, he holds a shot and kind of lets things play out sometimes. And Zoe Bell hopping on the side of the car and ripping around the loop, you know, kind of doing a 180 and then ripping down the road with her hanging out the side of it. There's just so many great moments, and he kind of lets that play out long enough. And it's not, the excitement isn't built from having 1,000 cuts. The excitement's built from having them drive this car down the road and her on the front of it, or them chasing them.
Is that really as exciting as when Liam Neeson jumped the fence and they did 15 cuts and like Taken 2, 3? Because my heart was pounding during that scene.
You're like, look at all those cuts. That had to be dangerous.
It's like, oh God,
they got on it.
Yeah, like whenever
like 3 days to get that.
They took, like, you know, I feel like Tarantino took the Jackie Chan approach to shooting fight scenes with shooting a car scene. You know, it's let the audience see it and know it's real.
Yeah, if you break something, like this is Rumble in the Bronx, Jackie Chan broke his foot, so you had to put him in a cast. And if you watch the end of the movie, they literally put a sock over his cast and then color it the same as the other Nike that he has on. And you don't notice until you go back and watch it. Oh, yeah, his foot's like 5 times bigger.
Yeah, when they're showing the credits are rolling and they're showing the sock,
I just love that they just literally put a sock over the cast and color the Nike check on it, and that's what they use in the movie. It's like,
he's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, like, it's so many movies. Like the other day I was watching the original Lethal Weapon. In the beginning part when Riggs like handcuffs himself to the guy's one, like the jumper, and then they jump off and land on the big like airbag or pillow thing. When they jump and they're in the air, there's the handcuffs aren't connected by anything. Like, so they connect it, and when they jump. So at least on the TV version I was watching, I noticed that. So many movies have these like little continuity things that in the course of the movie you don't notice it because there's so much action going on. It's only in there for a split second. But when you actually start paying attention, a lot of stuff falls apart. When I was watching this, like Death Proof, like I didn't really see anything that killed any of the effects. I mean, sometimes like the cars would turn in a certain way. It's like, okay, it's actually spun completely out and it's not straightening back up and leaving from that angle. But that's just, the way you cut stuff and the way most of those car chases just have to go. Because if you can't do all that in one run, because a lot of times cars can't really do all those things.
Yeah. I mean, it was, they hold the shots just long enough to where you really you can feel it and get some like emotion out of the car, if that's even a thing. But, and it's not just a series of incoherent cuts to showing the car from 5 different angles, which doesn't really, achieve anything when it's going down the road. Like, I want to see it rip down the road and go fast. Like, that's enough for me.
Yeah. So I guess we can start kind of wrapping up our thoughts on the overall. So I guess on the scores on this, we'll just give an overall score for Grindhouse.
I think we break it up for both of them too. I think we do that as well.
So you give them both the score and then the overall Grindhouse.
Yes,
because I think it is a unique experience. Yeah. So to start off, so Grindhouse as a whole, as an experiment, I think that it was more influential on the independent film scene and a lot of things that followed, more so than it was popular with the general audience. Just because I think a lot of filmmakers and people saw that and like, oh, I want to make stuff like that now. And then you saw stuff, and the director related to this, which was Hobo with the Shotgun, which won a contest that was related with the movie Grindhouse. Then Machete, and then the sequel to that, which came out of Robert Rodriguez. Then you've seen just a ton of movies since then that are, these different premises, like
Wolf Cop,
or I try not to name drop stuff I didn't like that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I'm just saying anything at all. Like Wolf Cop, I thought was okay.
Yeah, you don't have to like something.
Well, I was just saying because like they're out of like the independent cinema world, like people we know or worked with have been a bunch of like grindhousey stuff or talked about making that stuff, and it's kind of prevalent because it's an easy way to mask all the deficiencies in your budget and production design and stuff by saying, oh, it's Grindhouse. Which is kind of like when we did our 48-hour film, A Brush with Death.
To bring that up.
We were so lucky that we got B-movie as the genre, because then, like, well, anything that's messed up, it doesn't matter because it's just a B-movie.
It's a B-movie, yeah.
Which really gave us license to do kind of anything.
We should have just made the Jerry Seinfeld B-movie and be like, oh, we thought it was supposed to be a B-movie.
What's the deal with Paula?
You're going to have more money, honey. Bzzz.
Yeah, so the overall experience of Grindhouse, like I think over 3 hours, it's tough to sit down and watch in one sitting. Just like any movie that's over 3 hours. Like a lot of times if it's 3 hours, I have to take a little bit of break just because you need to use the bathroom or stuff like that. But as an overall experience,
stretch.
Like including the fake trailers and everything like that, like I enjoyed the fake trailers and stuff like that. Like as an overall experience, I guess like Grindhouse as a whole, I give it like a 7 out of 10. Like I liked it. I don't know. I want to sit down and watch the entire 3 hours. Maybe if I want to watch the trailers, I'll just go pull them up on YouTube or pull them up on Blu-ray or something. And then if I want to watch the individual movies, I probably just want to watch the individual movies. And then between the actual movies, so Planet Terror, like that is one I think you could take out like at a Halloween party, or if you're having people over watching movies, you could probably show that, and then your non-horror aficionados would be okay with it because it's zombies, it's kind of quick pace. Some people may not like it because it's kind of got the goofier elements, but I
screw those people.
Like I enjoyed it when it came out, and as the Rodriguez movies, I don't think it falls in the top of his filmography. Or, I mean, it's definitely above, like, all the Spy Kids crap and, like, some of his more recent output, like Sin City 2. But I still think it falls beneath, like, From Dusk Till Dawn, which is kind of like a grindhousey B-movie. And it falls beneath Desperado and El Mariachi and Once Upon a Time in Mexico. So, like, I think that it is overall an enjoyable movie. I'd probably give it, like, a 6.5, 7. Like, I enjoy watching it enough. But, overall, like, I don't watch it a bunch, but like I said, it's easy to watch because it's kind of goofy and it moves quickly. And it's got humor in it, it's got a good cast, and it's got, memorable moments in it. Death Proof, when I initially watched it, I wasn't a huge fan just because, most like you said, like, I liked Kurt Russell as an actor so much to see him be like this character that's like this weird killer guy that is like in control of the situation, a badass, and then he's kind of like a whiny bitch in the next segment. But it makes sense just because not that the women in the first part of it are kind of victims or, easier victims, just the scenario is different than the second one where they're like working on a movie and there's like a stunt actress and stuff. So, and like you said, it was almost two different movies. Like if you broke that into two, it's like they're two different stories. But the first story informs the second one, and it shows him getting his comeuppance for what he did. And you have Michael Parks as the sheriff in between talking about, when the Kurt Russell characters and when Stuntman Mike's in the hospital when he's talking about all that stuff. So like this, so overall that like rewatching it now, I would probably give it like an 8 just because I enjoy the way that it was made and I liked watching it. Now, I do take into account that it could be a little bit slow for people because you do all that build up to get to the climax of the first half, and then it just ends and resets, which is kind of a unique thing in that it doesn't follow a traditional 3-act structure. It just does one story, stops, does another story. It doesn't really have like the first act, second act, third act story that's all continuous. It just resets new characters almost in an anthology type way with that character, which was unique at the time, and like the practical effects and all that stuff. So I do enjoy that now more than when I saw it originally. So, Derek, what was your take?
All right. Well, as far as like the two combined, like the entire, give it a score out of 10. I'm just gonna give it like an A through F score because I don't feel like I can give it a score out of 10. I don't, so like to me it's like a B.
So I think that would be like a 7 or 8.
But the reason I don't want to give it the scores because I don't find them individually to even be above a 6. Like
you like the whole experience.
Yeah, I like the whole experience. You have like because you have like the Rob Zombie, Nicolas Cage stuff, and then like you have the Thanksgiving. I like them package as a whole.
As a package, they got the Nick Cage bump for you, right?
Yeah, as a package, but it's like I like it as. It's kind of one of those things too, like there's a role models quote here. Like they ask if he likes Coke, and he's like, well, I like the idea of it. Like, I like the idea of this movie better than I like the movie, but I, like as an entire package, like 7 out of 10 or a B is where I'd put it. But as far as getting them individual scores, they're both about a 6 to me.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to recommend anybody go watch these. Like I've watched them and I forgot about them. And then like there's if I want to go watch a movie with blood and guts and drive, and if I'm going to go watch a zombie movie, or if I do, I'm going to go watch like the 1970s like or 80s exploitation ones. So it's like, there's stuff there that I like. Like Bruce Willis, I completely forgot about was in it.
Yeah.
But they're fun, but I think there's just not a lot there for me. And I hate it because like I want to like it more because of who's all in it. But it's like, they're not bad. I
almost think that was a lot of people's reaction, or a good number of people's reactions that went to see that or around that time was they wanted to like it more.
Yeah, I think because who's in it and who's all involved and everything. And it's like, and like all the hype that was on it. Because I remember that being a big thing too when it came out, seeing a bunch of stuff in theaters for it and just hearing William and like you all talk about it and stuff. And then you actually see it and it's like, maybe it's not as good as, I don't know. Maybe it's something that almost got overhyped, and like maybe it kind of has maybe a little bit of Prometheus.
Well, well, maybe the hype maybe possibly hurt it, but honestly, at that era, having Rodriguez and Tarantino double bill, like it's hard to overhype that in 2007, because I think both those people were they're directors who really excited a lot of people who were into films at that time. So it's kind of a weird thing that you kind of a little dream project. It was like their second go at From Dusk Till Dawn, but in a different format almost.
Which to me, Dusk Till Dawn is the better. Like I think we even said this earlier. That is the better version of this. And if I was going to recommend one, I would just go recommend somebody to watch Dusk Till Dawn,
which was another Tarantino Rodriguez collaboration. Even though there wasn't like between the two films, I don't know that Tarantino. I think Rodriguez said his only contribution to Death Proof was like helping Tarantino with the name. He didn't really help any of the story stuff.
I think Tarantino helped direct some of the actors on Planet Terror, and I think he helped with some of the script stuff as well. And you can almost see not that Rodriguez doesn't fit in some very I don't know, colorful characters in his, but like there's so many characters and they have like cool gimmicks, like Dr. Dakota Block with her needles and stuff like that, and just like there's so many cool character moments in that. It kind of feels like a Tarantino film in some ways. Moments of that does to me.
Yeah. So
all right, Derek, you said your piece. Derek's
yes.
cutting out. All right. So yeah, as a whole, like I love the idea. I don't say I love it more than the film because again, I hold Death Proof it's such high regard, and I liked Planet Terror a lot more this time around after probably the third time watching it all the way through. And I kind of appreciate this. Yeah, as more of an event thing than an actual film I want to watch a lot. But because of that, it is something special. And I'd probably rate it like an 8 out of 10 or so, at least, just because, maybe more, just because I like it so much. But at the same time, the running time is also what brings down that score for me so much. And Planet Terror by itself, I don't know, maybe like a 7 out of 10. I think it's pretty enjoyable. And I would actually watch next time it's on. I'll probably watch more of it than just 5 minutes. I might give it a little bit more time, especially watching some of those segments, because even though it's been 10 years, when certain moments were coming up, I would remember them. And that means they were good moments, like the saw blade cutting Josh Brolin's glasses and him breaking off the thermometer in his mouth. Dr. Dakota Block, like I love that sequence when her hands are numb and like she breaks her hand in the door. Like there's so many good moments in that film that, again, if I remember them 10 years later and that many of them, like before those moments happen, like it must mean they did something right. There's a lot of good stuff in that movie, I think. And then Death Proof, again, like I was just really high on that film, and because it gave me a physical reaction, like it did something that no other films that I can think of have done, or at least consistently can do. And I give that a 10 out of 10. I mean,
wow,
it's like
the rare perfect score.
Yeah. Like, and not that it's a perfect movie, but when I grade on a 0 to 10, I'm using the whole scale. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying it's tops for me. It's one of the top films because I've watched it so many times and I like it more and more almost every time. I've kind of hit a limit, but I watched it a lot when I got that Blu-ray. And I love watching those action sequences. I love seeing Kurt Russell. He was doing some stuff at the time, but they kind of Tarantino kind of pulled him back out in the forefront. And I totally get too, if people are bored through a lot of this film, or if they don't have the same reaction to chases as me, because, not everybody does that. Like my wife, she likes them, but she doesn't like them the same way I do. Thinking about this too, like Tarantino, I was reading about, the Hangout film and stuff, and he apparently coined that term. And like Richard Linklater's films like Dazed and Confused or Everybody Wants Some, those are hangout films when you basically just have characters and you're just with them and there's no real plot or anything. Like Clerks is somewhat in that same vein. And I almost look at this as like a hangout film a little bit. Like there's a little bit going on, but really you're just with the characters. And if you don't enjoy those characters at all, and they're not, and the first group they're not nowhere near my favorite Tarantino characters at all. But I like them just enough to where I'm cool living with them, and I like seeing the girls talk, because the guys in this movie are douchebags. Eli Roth, they're dirtbags trying to get them drunk and stuff, and then Kurt Russell's character, Tarantino playing as the bartender. You don't know, but he's getting them free shots. But yeah, I can see if people aren't super hot on Death Proof, and I kind of got that at the time, but for me, it's one of my favorites.
Yep, so I think that wraps up our review of Grindhouse and all the associated elements that are a part of it. If you're enjoying the podcast, you can do us a huge favor. Go to iTunes, leave a review. That helps other people from the podcast and helps us move up the charts. So greatly appreciate if you could leave a review. Even if you just leave a star rating, that's better than nothing. So that would help us out tremendously. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions for us, things for us to cover, you can send us an email at podcast@housebyvideostore.com. Or if you're watching or listening via YouTube, you can always leave a comment there because we do like seeing feedback there. You can make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And you can find links to all of our social media accounts at housebyvideostore.com. So you can find links to everything there. Like I said, make sure you follow us on Facebook because that's where we post most of our stuff. And then if you want to find us specifically on the internet, you can find me on Twitter at Will_Droid.
You can find me at pretty much anything at MetaWorld Derek.
And I'm at Splevin Sean. And this weekend is going to be a weird one because we have a new Alien film directed by Ridley Scott.
Yeah.
And a new, the premiere of Twin Peaks directed by David Lynch. So, yeah, exciting times ahead. So we'll be doing that in person next week for Alien, right?
Yeah, so Alien Covenant, the plan is to record that in person, and Julia will be on because she's going to see that as well because she likes the Alien film. So then it's the plan for that. And then based on the timing, we may not be able to record that before Twin Peaks, but we'll have something on Twin Peaks early next week because we'll do a video after everybody, or after at least me and Sean get a chance to watch it. So that's stuff to be on the lookout for because 2017 is becoming the early 90s all over again. Or
very exciting times ahead. Either way it turns out, I'm excited to see David Lynch direct at Twin Peaks. Like,
there's no way to know what you're going to get.
Yeah, I mean they keep saying Firewalk with me, and maybe it's thematically, maybe it's story, but also too I'm guessing because Twin Peaks wasn't that was on NBC.
ABC,
Firewalk with Me, rated R movie. Like, I'm thinking they're probably going to go a little darker with this. And there was some very intense scenes in Firewalk with Me, especially that kind of club scene and stuff. So I'm very intrigued about what this season revival is going to actually be and the tone of it.
Well, and two, this is the most directorial work that David Lynch has done since Inland Empire in 2006, which is his last feature film.
Yeah, I mean, this was a marathon. And two, so many people are in this show. Like, I'm not looking at the cast list again because, we looked at that when it was
like over 100 people.
Yeah, it's just there's going to be so many.
Michael Cera's going to be in it.
Yeah, so it's going
to have.
I remember he was in it though.
Trent Reznor and like a bunch of people that don't make a lot of sense, but we'll see.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. And then Alien too. Like, hey, got a new Alien film. So
yep. So be on the lookout for that. But that'll bring this episode of the House by Video Store podcast to a close. Thanks for listening.